So I wasn't planning on making a video about this. It's actually pretty late. What is it? It is 11 p.m. right now. So I definitely wasn't planning on making this, but enough people have been talking about this. I have a podcast that I do, and a lot of our audiences, they've been kind of saying things about this too when it comes to Shoe on Head, because Shoe on Head was, ran in our crowd, my crowd back in the day on YouTube. We were doing all this content where we were like making fun of, they were called SJWs at the time, but like if you want to accurately classify them or identify them, I would say they were progressive ideologues. Like progressivism, never had an issue with it my entire life. There was this weird sector of it, these people that were like ideological zealots with stuff, and they weren't even bringing good arguments, and they were just making things worse. They were poisoning the well, and they were just cringe, really, at the end of the day. Nothing serious. It was just all like poking and good fun. There were some people that were taking things way too seriously, and those people suck. And then there was a lot of people that came in, they just started grifting and things got weird. But yeah, that's where Shu was, we were in acquaintances and like everything was cool. And eventually things got broken up and everybody went their separate ways. And, I haven't, to be honest, I haven't been keeping up with Shoe on Head's content. And, for most people's, for that matter, I watch very like mundane stuff that either has to do with history, gaming, some of the fitness industry, stuff like that. And so like there's a lot of stuff when it comes to like political takes or people are talking about certain things like that I'm like just not interested in, because anything that has to do with politics, I have a lot of my old school stuff that I've reverted to, like certain podcasts I've listened to, since like 2012 and stuff like that. So YouTube has never been extremely reliable for me, just in a certain time period where there was a lot of like discourse happening. But I feel like a lot of stuff now is what people are correctly identifying as just slop, right? It's just a bunch of slop. There's a bunch of charlatans, grifters, snake oil salesmen, a bunch of people that are just trying to maximize their profits. And I get it. That's what's going to happen. So I didn't really want any part of it. So it's like, I like the idea of just having this little low-key channel and starting over, seeing how things play out, and, but yeah. So getting into like what's going on with Shu, she was, I guess, horrified with everything that went down with Charlie Kirk, and a lot of people were. And she was also disgusted in seeing a lot of people celebrate and stuff like that. And, this was, I guess, she said that this changed her, and it probably changed a lot of people, like, the people that are watching her, which is probably true too. But, when I see stuff like this, and I just want to say up front, this is not a video trashing Shu. I'm not interested in trying to, let me do a takedown or whatever. It's just, like I once actually covered one of her videos years ago that had to do with like, why are the loneliness epidemic in like men or something like that. And I wanted to respond to, I had a different perspective on what's been going down. So it wasn't necessarily about like, let me trash her. But same with that, I have a very different perspective on this whole situation. And I just found it very interesting that like, that this can change anyone that was following politics, to be completely honest, because if you are someone who's been following politics, then you are well aware of how much political violence has surrounded us on the regular. Like at this point, if you've been following politics at all, like you should be numb by this point. Like maybe if you just jumped into it and you're like, what's going on with everything? I'm Gen Alpha. I want to get involved. And then you had to witness what happened to Charlie Kirk, and you'd be like, oh my God, like, I don't know if I can handle this. This is crazy. But like, if you've been around for like a decade or more or anything like that, like this is honestly just, yes, a high profile event because, Charlie Kirk had a large following and he had a lot of notoriety. But besides that, man, the amount of like, say, gun violence you've experienced, whether it be in gangs, whether it be by the police, whether it being the idiots shooting up the schools, or if you just pay attention even a little bit to geopolitics since you were younger, just all the numbers of people that have been slaughtered, the genocide that's going on right now. And it's like, why did this change you so much? What was it about this thing in particular that was much more important? And I pretty sure I have the answer to it, but I feel like a lot of people wouldn't examine it. And if it stared them in the face, they wouldn't accept it. Right? Because a lot of the stuff that I'm referring to with a lot of political violence that happens, it has to do with things that people right now that are changed by Charlie Kirk, like the other stuff didn't relate to them at all. You know, like say black people caught on camera being murdered. It's normal. It's like the Joker said in The Dark Knight where, you know, like regular violence happens all the time, gang people, like whatever, shot stuff. But then, you know, if a mayor got murdered, everybody loses their mind. You know, I'm paraphrasing, but you understand that like there is a social norm to a lot of people where certain people struggle, certain people are in trouble, they're in dire needs, they're getting slaughtered. It doesn't matter. It's just, well, it's happening all the time. And then something like this that is a little bit different, like this young, extremely wealthy person that is extremely polarizing gets, you know, blasted. And then the media, especially with the current administration that is pulling the reins of everything, they're making him to be like this martyr now. Like even Shu says like this is like a regular guy. This is a podcaster. I'm like, well, it's true. He is a podcaster. But he has a ton of influence. So he's not just any podcasters. That's like calling Joe Rogan just a guy. Joe Rogan is mainstream media now, right? Like there's legacy media and mainstream media, which also means what is the biggest? What is mainstream? That is Joe Rogan. Joe Rogan is the biggest. So he's not just a guy. He is a podcaster, but he is an extremely influential guy. He is the new media. And so Charlie Kirk was gaining traction for people on the right for that. And so that made it more sensational. And then it's telling you that this is more of a bigger deal, especially like you kind of know this guy more. You may have even talked to him or, you know, people, you know, certain things about him. So like, so it seems much more like a big and prominent thing. But to a lot of other people and to myself, well, I'm like, well, no, this is just collective in things that happen all the time. Just like on the same day, a kid got shot in the school, kid died, you know, like, and then nobody freaked out about that. That didn't change people other than the people that were there, but the people that were spectating on the internet, it didn't change them. It didn't break them. They didn't call for civil war or anything like that. They're not calling for changes or anything like that. But for this one particular person, they are. And to me, that's very interesting. And that's where things are very different for me in my perspective, because it kind of, it feels bad, you know, because if you're someone who looks like me, if you're a black person, if you're brown or anything like that, you understand what that kind of means. And it shows America's priority, what they're prioritizing. It shows you when I was watching the UFC and seeing, a rest in peace for this guy who peddles hatred for a living, right? There's a lot of people that are trying to pretend like he doesn't do that. And they're trying to say that all of his quotes are taken out of context, and you show the full context and you're like, well, this is actually worse. You know, like people, it's kind of crazy, but I expect that though. I am a history buff. I love history. This is not new. The way that people have always been trying to whitewash horrible things throughout history. Literally, that is happening right now with Confederacies type stuff. Like, oh, you know, when people are trying to take down statues and stuff like that, because it's like, oh, this symbolizes the traitors to our country that seceded and tried to keep slavery going. And then we're honoring these people, which is something that happened, you know, to intimidate black people after they were free. Because that's when these monuments were built, to commemorate these people and intimidate black people that lived in those areas. Like, there's people that'll be like, oh, that's not what happened. I'm like, that's exactly what happened. You can read this shit if you want to. Just like there are people that would say, oh, the Civil War had nothing to do with slavery. Please read the Articles of Secession. Please read them. Like, just read them. But the thing is, they won't. And this is the same thing that's happening with Charlie Kirk. People don't want to read. They don't want to believe anything that is antithetical to their worldview. They want to believe that this was a good Christian man and that's it. And I'm like, brother, I've met good Christian men. I've seen good Christian men. I've lived with good Christian men. They were not preaching the things that he was preaching. They would not take something like Leviticus or Deuteronomy and use it as an excuse to hate certain types of people. You know, like people are saying, oh, the thing about stoning gays, it was taken out of context. I'm like, no, it absolutely was not. What do you mean? Particularly because when he's talking about Leviticus, because he's making a point against somebody who's trying to talk about loving loving your neighbor, and he tries to say like, oh, that's in Leviticus. Well, there's another thing in Leviticus that says that you should stone gay people, essentially. And Charlie Kirk calls it God's perfect law. God's perfect law. That's his own words. Other people wouldn't use those words because they wouldn't agree with that. Because they would think that that's horrendous. That is an archaic thing, and I don't believe in that. You know, I'll believe in the teachings of Jesus Christ, right? I'll believe in that, but I won't even refer to that whatsoever because I just don't believe in that. But that is something that he believes, and he makes an argument for it. If you didn't believe in it, if you didn't think it was good, you wouldn't call it God's perfect law, and you wouldn't use it as an argument. And if anybody's confused, if there's anybody, because like this video is for people who I would call on the level, who are just reasonable. People who aren't here to watch me trash you on head because I don't, like I said, I'm not interested in that. And people who aren't advocates of Charlie Kirk because I don't even know why the fuck you would be here. Because it's like, this is not your bag. Like, I don't understand why people want to watch things that deeply upset them. When it's like, why don't you, if you want to live in this small bubble that reveres people who spew hatred and division, by all means, go over there, because that's not what this is. Like, we're just being real about this over here. But I did want to just at least bring up this part because this is where it's from. So they're talking about Miss Rachel's Pride Month. And just this little clip here, because the most important thing is when he says God's perfect law.
Scripture is in Leviticus 18, is that thou shalt lay with another man shall be stoned to death. Just saying.
Just saying.
So, Miss Rachel, you quote Leviticus 19, love your neighbor as yourself. The chapter before affirms God's perfect law when it comes to sexual matters. Now,
and I think that's very important. God's perfect law when it comes to sexual matters. And it's like, okay, so that's his interpretation. Because somebody might try to spin that and be like, oh, he's not saying that's what he believes. I'm like, then why would he call it that? He wouldn't call it that if he didn't believe it that, because that's just how words work, guys. Basically, if you are trying to weasel out of this, that means you've identified what has been said. You don't like what was said, but you want to continue to like this guy, so you're going to make excuses for what he said. It's just like, there's so many clips like this, though. It's like the one when he has that debate on Jubilee, and he was like, oh, blacks lived better under the 1940s. They were better off. And he was like, oh, it was a horrible time and stuff. It was bad, but, you know, there must be a reason why. And it's like, okay, this is what a racist would say. Because why would a racist try to justify a time where we were treated subhuman? People that looked like me were considered subhuman, right? Jim Crow laws. There was so much horrible things happening during that time that you would never try to justify that time period and being like, oh, they were doing better because of X, Y, and Z. And it's like, yeah, dude. Subjugation, you don't have much choice. And then after the civil rights movement even happened, it still didn't make things infinitely better right off the bat. He doesn't talk about, like, say everybody was doing better on average around that time period anyway. Like, right after the Gilded Age, after the Black Tuesday, all these things happening that absolutely destroyed the economy, and then things started to slowly build up with good leadership. People were doing better on average. They were actually good policies. He doesn't talk about that. No, it's all about like, oh, black people. Like, what about everybody collectively was doing better around this time period, especially post World War II? If you want to talk about that, still post before the civil rights, they were doing better on average. Everybody was flourishing, especially because rich people were being taxed like crazy. Because instead of just being robber barons like back in the day during the Gilded Age, right? That's not what he talks about. He talks about, oh, black people do this. Why are they doing so bad now? This, and that. And it's like, I don't know, man. Maybe because of policies that didn't let them live in certain areas, keep stealing their resources, burning down their businesses, terrorism. Historically, I mean, like, what is the KKK? It's like, bro, so much stuff that has happened, and then like he'll be like, oh yeah, you know, I'm not trying to discount that stuff. And it's like, you literally are, because you're not talking about that stuff. If you were actually interested in knowing why historically things have been pretty fucking bad for black and brown people, well, all the answers are there. But you don't want the answers. And it's like, why do people keep trying to go back to this one era where this is when things were better? And it's like, dude, we could do better than that. Why are we trying to go backwards? We can do better than all the shit that was happening. Those aren't the arguments that this guy's trying to make. So what am I supposed to make of that? Someone who looks like me. And I think the biggest problem is that there's people that identify with this guy because he looks similar. They're similar in age and stuff like that. He's quippy with some of these debates because they watch the, those clips. They never watch the clips of him getting blown the fuck out, right? They've never seen compilations of those. They'll never go out of their way to watch those and maybe even start thinking twice about some of the stuff that he believes in. They watch the other stuff, the positive stuff of him, right? Because that's the whole point of this whole thing. Doing debates, trying to get people to agree with you and bring things more to a theocratic era, right? But for Christianity. Project 2025, he's aware of all this stuff. And I'm over here being like, oh, wow, this is catering to people that do not look like me, people who do not like me and then actually wish that I was not in this country. And the biggest thing that annoys me is that someone like Charlie will just deny that, oh, I'm not racist. He'll just say, I'm not sexist. He'll just say things like that. And that's good enough for certain people. As if like people can't lie. As if there's no shades of gray of people doing dog whistles or saying this and this and that. And then when they're pressed, they deny things. It's like historically there have been groups and there have been regimes that they have lied about who they are and what their agenda is the entire time. The reason why, say, oh, the Nationalist Socialist Party, the Nazis, there was a great thing because they knew socialism was popular. So you call yourselves that, but you do everything that is fascism. You take some beats from Italy because, hey, I like what they're doing. It's so obvious if you're not a complete moron that you just pull the veil, right? You just do these things and then all of a sudden people are too stupid to understand this. They'd be like, oh, look, it has the word socialist, National Socialist. Oh, this is bad, Nazi. Like, and I'm like, yeah, they did that on purpose. And how do I know this? Because Hitler wrote about it. You can read it in his words. See, I like history. I know about these things. If you want to go find it out, it's there. Why don't you use ChatGPT and be like, hey, man, ask some questions about that. What I just said, go verify it. It's all there. It's all interesting. It's fascinating. History is very fascinating. It would be nice if people really liked history because then we wouldn't be where we are. If people can actually start to snuff out who are good and bad people, because one thing that I know, people who constantly say things about black people that are problematic, they're not good people. People that are constantly putting down women or referring to some of the worst parts of the Old Testament, not typically good people. And then people are like, oh my God, how could you talk about this? He's dead. And I'm like, bro, I have to watch this dude's colleagues, Charlie Kirk, and a bunch of people in his party, in his camp, in his congregation, say some of the worst things about people, make jokes about George Floyd, whomever, seeing people do the George Floyd challenge. And back then it was pick your poison. It was Trayvon Martin and stuff, and people just posting these memes, doing these things, just completely not taking it seriously, lampooning all this stuff, laughing about it. Hey, remember Paul Pelosi, right? Gets hit by the hammer. Some Trump supporter hits him with the hammer. He makes jokes about it. He makes some like gay jokes and he says, hey, some patriot should bail him out. Look, I'm not offended because I've been in politics for quite some time. I've been paying attention to geopolitics since I was 20 years old. I'm 37 now. This to me is par for the course. I don't like it, but I know it's there. I know that there's these people that are super edgy and they don't care about political violence. They actually think it's funny when it's the opposition. When, people get assassinated on the left, they think it's hilarious. When pipe bombs were mailed to Democrats by a Trump supporter, people laughed about it and were like, damn, they wish they would have got it and shit like that. Like, I saw that stuff and I'm like, that's crazy. That's my reaction. And then all of a sudden now I'm seeing there's these people celebrating Charlie Kirk, right? Dying, being assassinated. And then I'm seeing these same people that celebrated, deaths on the left, violence on the left, that, things when it's at their expense. All of a sudden now, it's one of their guys. Now they care. Now they care. That's the thing that's happening now. They care now. Oh, now their lives are changed. Now everything's different. And I'm like, damn, dude, where were you? Like, where were you when kids were being slaughtered by guns? Where were you? Where were you when people around the world by the military industrial complex were being slaughtered? Right? I had to see things. I have seen some horrible things, man. I have seen some horrible things in Afghanistan. I've seen some horrible things in Libya. And those two in particular, because that's two big things that like really caused me to pay attention. When it would be like, say, police brutality, some of the stuff, one thing that really got me up was a moment that happened. A guy named Kelly Thomas, a homeless man that got beaten to death in downtown Fullerton. Some people I know were actually there and they witnessed it. It basically, when cell phones were barely okay, you know, they're barely just starting to get on the cusp of being smart and stuff like that. And then that was when people were really trying to get involved in filming the police. I was like, copblock.org. I don't think it doesn't exist anymore, but that was something that I was like, involved in. And it's just like things that like, I've seen so much and I know what America is about. And people like to say like, oh man, there's no place for political violence. I'm like, none of you believe that shit. First of all, if you didn't believe that shit, then you wouldn't believe in the Second Amendment, because the Second Amendment is literally for political violence. Oh, you think the government's being crazy and it's being tyrannical? You're supposed to take up arms, you know, and you're supposed to just overthrow them. You're basically like what the founding fathers did, right? King George was being way too crazy, and they were like, "Hey, man, screw this. No taxation without representation. We're going to war. Like, screw you." They fought. It was violent. You know, one of the quotes, everybody knows this quote, man, like the tree of liberty must be refreshed with the blood of patriots and tyrants. Like, that is a part of our Constitution, essentially. The language and then the amendments that followed it. That's why the Second Amendment exists, right? So it's like that is baked into our system and what we believe. So I'm like, what are you talking about? What it has to do is when it's at your expense, when it's somebody that you know or like, now you don't like it. See, people like me have wanted this shit to end. I'm like, bro, we are way too advanced in technology and our stupid tribal minds are not meeting. We're not matching. We're not keeping up. Technology is so far outpacing us that we're still stuck in this bullshit. Like, yeah, there shouldn't be a need for any of this stuff. I don't think the Second Amendment should exist anymore. I don't think there should be a need for anything like that. I don't think there should be a need for a gun culture. I think we should have transcended this a long time ago. But I recognize how stupid and tribal we are. And so we're never going to get over that. So that's just a reality that we live in. And the reality is political violence. I fucking hate it. But I understand that there's people that love it and worship it. You know who somebody that did? Charlie Kirk. He thought the Second Amendment was super important, and people dying via guns is a worthy sacrifice. Right? And that's not me trying to be like, oh, and see, like, justify. I'm like, bro, I'm just saying this is something that is very important to a lot of people, and they only don't like it when it affects them. And that is my entire point right now, is that there are certain people that were affected by this, but they were affected by nothing else. They're not affected by the dozens of children that have been slaughtered by guns. They're not affected by all the people that have been killed by police brutality. They didn't care about any of the children that have died in Gaza, Afghanistan, Iran, anywhere. Pick Libya, all the stuff that is going where these places are just blown to pieces. Depleted uranium everywhere. A lot of places can't even be inhabited for a long time. Right? People just go to work, they laugh, they drink their tea, they do whatever they're doing, they party. Life goes on. And then this one guy that you happen to like, now all of a sudden it's too far. And I think you got to ask the question, why do I feel this way? Why don't I care about any of the other political violence that happens all the time? Right? Like, I ask the question when it comes to, like, say, protecting children, because, like, the right tries to pretend like they're the party of protecting kids. Like, oh, we got trans people, they're trying to groom kids and all this shit. And I'm like, why do you guys literally never say not one fucking thing when it comes to all the religious abuse You know, the children being abused in religious institutions is staggering. And it's literally never brought up on the right. It's never brought up. Never. Like, dude, just the one statistic alone, I brought this up so many times because I want it to be hammered home to people. There's over 80,000 cases of sexual abuse in the Boy Scouts alone. Can you imagine if there were, I don't know, 100 abuses in like just like with like trans people? Like there's 100 cases like within a few years, people would be like, oh my God. But then like they'll find like 3. And then there's been like 5 trans shooters, and there's been hundreds of white people doing it. White men. It is 99.9% white men. They ain't got nothing to say about that. Huh? They got nothing to say about all these kids being sexually abused. Oh, but then they found a few trans people. So I'm like, why don't you care about this other stuff? And that is the thing. Those are the questions that I feel like people need to ask themselves that care so deeply about this one person. And it's like, why don't all these other people mean anything to you? And I mean that sincerely. To me, this is not supposed to be like a gotcha moment. This is supposed to be like a, hey, I really want you to care about everything. I want you to be affected. I want it to hurt your stomach. I want you to get active. I want you to talk to your friends and family and ask them the same questions, because this would start the beginning for people to care, and maybe we can actually get some common sense laws that will actually protect people. Because I believe this, and I genuinely believe this, because I think all the rhetoric that Charlie Kirk was saying and all that stuff, I think it was detestable. I hate it. But I think it's important for these people to show themselves. Show themselves. Because then it's like, here's an example. We go somewhere else, right? In some other countries, we can go to Australia. We can go to like some countries in Scandinavia and be like, all right, these guys are doing better, a lot better on average and stuff. And look how these people conduct themselves on average. This is like maybe a good example of what we should move towards. Not people being assholes, right? Like saying things that definitely upset a lot of people. And it's like, and then you have all these people trying to be like, oh, he's just exercising his free speech. I'm like, yeah, sure you are. Absolutely you are. But does that mean you should be an asshole? Like, what is that? What are you trying to communicate to me? Because me, I don't want to upset people. I'm not trying to. I would like people to do better on average. Everyone. I think religion is poisonous. I'm sorry. Because you see what it does to a lot of people. They use it as an excuse to hate or other people. Because in their worldview, God disagrees with you being born. But I'm like, God made everything and is all-knowing and perfect and stuff like that. So you must be wrong. This is man interpreting God's work. You must be wrong about God. This is man speaking for God. And God has free will, so God's not going to intervene. All that's bullshit. I don't believe in any of this shit. But I'm just saying, even if it was real, it would have to be like, bro, if gay and trans people and all this stuff exist and God created everything and is perfect, then this must be perfect too. And you are railing against God's perfection. Right? But people don't want to take that. They're like, no, I want to be a bigot. I want to harbor hatred. I want there to be an other. It makes me feel better. I feel superior over something now because you are an abomination. That is how these people behave, and it is fucking disgusting. Brother, like, this is not how I grew up. This is never how I was. I don't know how people back in the day were like, oh, this guy, like, this guy is conservative. I'm like, what? What gives you the impression, oh, I made fun of some progressive ideologues? Who gives a fuck? What, people that have progressive ideals can't make fun of progressives? Like, what the fuck are you talking about? It's almost like, imagine you being a fan of a football team. Like, I like the Raiders, Las Vegas Raiders. You gotta shit on them. They suck. So I'm not a fan of them anymore because I'm really upset with some of the shit that they're doing? Like, what is wrong with you? Why can, like political tribalism is fucking crazy. But yeah, man, like I'm like I said, like I'm not trying to, this is like there's a collective zeitgeist happening that I just feel like that is faux. It is fake. It is not real to me. It is people being convinced to revere somebody that obviously isn't as important as they're trying to make it out. Just like, say, backing up Shu, where he's saying, this is a podcast, or this is just a guy. And I'm like, well, but then why are you reacting like he's not that? Like it should be obvious when I'm examining these things, when I'm examining these feelings, and it's like you feel this way about this person, but you wouldn't feel this way about this person. Like, okay, you don't know them. You know this person, okay, but how well do you know them? So how strong is this parasocial connection? Were you actually friends with this person? Did you actually hang out with them? Did you have like feelings like love and kinship and stuff like that? Did that, or is this like somebody you watched occasionally? Why? Like, it's like, okay. So let me just wrap it up here. It is very clear that there's a lot of people that have a certain narrative of how things are going. They believe in their heart of hearts that all the political violence is coming from the left. And they believe that this is an ultimate example of it happening. This is what they believe because the media that they watch has been telling them that. And so they're like, see, it's being reinforced. But that's just not reality. You know, that's why it's like the people that are indifferent or celebratory, even though like I'm not down for that. That's not something that I do because I actually want all this shit to actually stop. But I understand that in the real world, in reality, political violence is actually celebrated quite a bit. And if you want to talk about statistics, it is vast majority on the right. And if you want to talk about, you know, people committing political violence, it is on the right overwhelmingly. If you just want to look up a little bit of statistics, if you care about being in the real world at all, you would just spend a good 10, 15 minutes just to look up this stuff. Look up all the graphs. There's a graph right now that a bunch of people were sharing. As a matter of fact, let me pull it up on lastly. A bunch of people have been sharing this graph to be like, oh, look at, there's a spike in left-wing violence and stuff. And if you look at the graph itself, it's showing you that it's overwhelmingly violence from the right. So we just pull this up really fast. This is a little small picture, but let me click on what the actual graph is. And you see like left and right wing U.S. domestic terrorism attacks, and it shows you right wing's gray, left wing is the gold. And you can see overwhelmingly, obviously, but people were using this because of the headline that they kept seeing. They kept seeing this headline where they were like, study left wing terrorism climbs to 30-year high. So it's climbed. Doesn't mean that it's overtaken the right at all. And then the funny thing is a bunch of people started sharing all these other graphs that just show other examples. Let me just get out of the way a little bit and just showing the other examples. Like, look at this. Look at all the red. Right-wing murders versus left-wing murders. Look at this. And then you can just keep going. You can keep going. People are showing other graphs too. It's like the same deal. People are showing the same type of stuff. It's just like, bro, so the blue, right-wing extremism, 75%. Like, it's just showing you like left-wing is the gold, domestic Islamist extremism. But guess what? You know what the funny thing about Islamic extremism? That's conservatism too. Because that is Islam is more conservative than Christians. That is conservatism. But the difference is the people don't want to consider it that because they think conservatism is white over here. No, dude, there is right-wing extremism, which is usually tied to Christianity, which is conservatism, and this is conservatism. So overwhelmingly, it's still on the right, 75%. And then you add that 20% miscellaneous left-wing, because the left-wing one, like, what are they even fucking doing? There isn't massive gun cultures on the left like there is on the right. There isn't this massive Christian culture that is tied to Nazism and the KKK and all this stuff. Historically, it's obvious. But there's a bunch of people that will lie to you and say that's not the case. Unfortunately, Charlie Kirk was one of those people. And so when you just accept reality, you can see that like, damn, if you're one of those people that just didn't know about these statistics, you have to be like, oh shit, I was lied to. I've been lied to my entire life. At least as far as I've been paying attention to politics, I've been lied to. And it's like, bro, yes, you have. And that shit sucks. You've been lied to. And it's better to live in the real world, understand how much things suck even more because you realize how divided we are. Because there's people who are just actually on the level that are seeing the statistics, that are using data, that are just following studies, empirical data. They're just trying to see what is really happening and trying to fix things. And then there are opportunists and there are racists and there are just people who are fundamentalists in their extremism and their dogma that are trying to paint the world in a certain way, and they're trying to build a certain utopia, and they're trying to separate people who clearly can't join their utopia and to bring in other people that they would love to have in it. And unfortunately, Charlie Kirk was one of those people. He was building towards something. He was helping take this country in a certain way. And even when he showed to care about certain things, like, oh, we got to get these Epstein files and this, and that. And then all of a sudden he was like, okay, I'm going to stop talking about this. I'm going to trust my friends in the FBI. And I'm like, that is not a person who is authentic. This is a person who has an agenda. And there's so many people that are just like, oh man, he was trying to bridge the gap. He was trying to talk to us. I'm like, that's like, damn, man, I wish people weren't so fucking retarded, dude. But that's all I got to say, man. Like, again, like I said, I was trying to take this opportunity to trash you. Like, you know, it is what it is. It is what it is. There's a lot of, like, the world's too tribal and divided, and unfortunately, things are going to have to get much worse before they get better, because that is how things have happened historically. We're at a post-truth society where evidence, data doesn't matter. Logic and reason doesn't matter. None of that shit matters. People will see their lives getting increasingly harder. They will see things getting more expensive. They'll see things getting just infinitely worse for them. And they still won't identify the real problem, and that is the commander-in-chief implementing horrible fucking policies. They will make excuses. They will listen to political pundits telling them, oh, the left's doing it. The left's doing it. Oh, it's the left. And I'm like, okay, man. Like, here we go again. You know, like, this has happened historically. We're going to have to go through it again in this country. You know, it seems like every generation this is going to happen a few times over. And eventually, yeah, things will get better maybe in 10 years. And then shit will get shit again. But all right, guys, that's it. Do me a favor. Hit the like button on the way out. I'd appreciate it.